The rise of the ethical consumer is happening in Africa apace, according to Sarah Campbell from Kaelo. Kaelo is a content engagement agency, and she joins me this morning. Before we even start about why, tell me what an ethical consumer is.
Jeremy, an ethical consumer is a consumer that makes his or her purchase decisions based on the moral standing of a company or what the company is doing in the community or for the environment.
You make the interesting point, or a survey makes the interesting point, that 34% of consumers say they buy more of a product or give preference to products that they know engage in corporate social responsibility programs or practices. Particularly within Africa, why have we seen this dramatic change?
I think the change has come, it's happening globally, and Africa is following the global trend. However, I also think that Africans are becoming more astute to what companies are doing in their communities, and in fact are demanding that companies get involved in community development or in saving the environment and helping with environmental concerns.
Sarah, do you get the sense sometimes that maybe the consumers are ahead of the brands in this respect, that they know what they want, but the brands, when it comes to delivering that kind of service or corporate responsibility, are a little behind the curve?
Very definitely. I think you're always going to have consumers that are out there that are very active, that are building their knowledge around what a brand stands for in a community. And in South Africa, we're starting to see the brands catching up to realizing that corporate social responsibility and communicating around it is a key pillar in the sort of reputation building of a brand.
The survey makes the interesting point that some countries do it better than others, notably Rwanda. I wonder why.
I think that's probably to do with the history of Rwanda and where it's come from, especially obviously with the traumatic genocide. And perhaps Rwandans are just more astute to what companies should be doing and more astute to social issues, considering what they've gone through.
Tell me a little bit about your agency now and how it interfaces with this particular practice. In other words, what do you do in this respect? How are you building campaigns around it?
So we specialize in communicating about socially responsible practices, so whether it's environmental or community development. Our biggest content platform is Kaelo Stories of Hope, which is a television series, and then a series of online inserts, a printed coffee table book, and some digital elements. And we specialize in putting together campaigns to help companies, brands, government organizations tell consumers what they're doing in the communities and the good work that they are doing.
How difficult is it to align what you're doing with general brand building principles?
The principles are basically the same, and aligning it has been a challenge in the past. However, we are seeing that we can work side by side with the general corporate agency or the brand agency of a big corporate. We're not territorial, and hopefully they won't be that territorial.
Well, I mean, that's the question. Is there ultimately not a competition here for budget?
There is a competition for budget. However, we tend to work more in the foundation space. So we work, for instance, with MTN Foundation. And what we're finding is that the foundations are saying to us we need specialists in this area, that the brand and the corporate agencies aren't necessarily cutting it in terms of being able to get the tonality right or the context right of what they're communicating.
Let's talk a little about that, because it's fascinating, the tonality, the nuance in that respect. Very simple example sometimes, the use of a word, the incorrect use of a word, but that can make all the difference.
Yes, very definitely. For instance, you know, when referring to people living with disabilities, you often will be seeing in press releases or in material people being referred to as disabled people. In our world and in our environment, that's a complete no-no. Orphans being referred to just as orphans, also a complete no-no.
Instead of what, orphaned children?
Or orphans and vulnerable children. So there are these little nuances that corporate agencies or big brand agencies may be missing. And then also the context of what they're communicating, the context of education in South Africa, the context of health issues in South Africa.
Ultimately, are brands doing this because it makes them feel good, or can there be a definite impact on sales?
Definitely an impact on sales. It is, you know, you've got to watch out for greenwashing or that type of thing. But an impact.
Greenwashing is another way of saying paying lip service to something.
Yes.
Yeah. In other words, you try to be authentic, but we all see through it.
Yeah. So, I mean, from our point of view, we are always advocating the brands, if they are going to communicate in the space, it has to be transparent, it has to be authentic. And our biggest word of encouragement that we give to brands is let's communicate the challenges and the successes, because through communicating the challenges is where other brands can learn from their competitors. And I mean, ultimately this is about social good and developing South Africa and making sure that the investment is impactful.
You've got a number of case studies. Let's look at one commercial case study very quickly if we can. Momentum, the brief was to educate the middle market in terms of financial literacy, a huge problem in this country.
Yes.
How did you approach that?
So for that we put together a television series called Making Sense with the Sitoles. It was set in Cosmo City, built around a family, and each different character in the family had different problems or challenges with financial literacy. Some were very astute. The younger matriculant was probably more astute than Ace, her father. And we built a whole drama series around the family and weaved in the messaging on financial literacy. Results for that were really good. When we did some impact research and some research as to whether our messages had reached the audience, we were sitting with about a 97% of the sample said that they had learned something from the series. And then for Momentum, 64% had then contacted a Momentum advisor.
I think you've made the case. Sarah Campbell from Kaelo, thank you very much.
Thank you.